Hey, hot diggity, welcome back to Touring History, the podcast where we pretend we're qualified to talk about the past because we own calendars and Wikipedia accounts. I'm Lane.
And I'm qualified Dave. Ha! I've got the stamp of approval on my forehead to prove it.
He does, look at it, it's beautiful.
Itchy, though. And before we dive into today's cavalcade of historical chaos, we need to talk about donuts. Yes, specifically. Yay, Randy's Donuts. All right.
Here we go again. Dave's hungry.
Oh, that's an understatement, Lane. I'm always hungry. But this is different. Randy's Donuts has been a Los Angeles institution since 1952. That's over 70 years of perfectly glazed happiness, ladies and gentlemen. And you know what I love about Randy's? They've got that giant donut sign that's basically become a landmark. You can't miss it.
It's true. I drove past it once and honestly thought I was having some sort of sugar-induced hallucination, but no, it's just Randy's being gloriously extra about donuts.
That's right. Even though you drove right through a bag of flour, that huge one. Exactly. And speaking of being extra, they've got everything from classic glazed to filled donuts, croissant donuts, even donut holes for when you want the experience but can't commit to the full circle. Go for it. Check them out at randysdonuts.com because life's too short for mediocre pastries.
All right. Speaking of things that are sweet, today is June 18th, which means we're diving into a date that's seen everything from Napoleon getting absolutely wrecked at Waterloo to NASA launching America's first woman into space.
Yeah. And plus, we've got birthdays, military evacuations, and oh God, the Titan submersible disaster. Yikes.
Oh boy. Yeah, we'll handle that one with the appropriate.
Oh!
Oh, sorry. Too soon. But first, let's talk about who was born on this day because honestly, it's kind of a murderer's row of town.
Okay, so Paul McCartney turns 83. 83, Lane. Oh, bloody, oh, bloody. The man who wrote Yesterday is now in his 80s. How do you like that?
That's deeply unsettling, Dave. You know what's weird, though? Paul McCartney was born the same day as Carol Kane, who's turning 73. And I cannot think of two people who seem like they inhabit more different universes.
Yeah, that is weird. Carol Kane, Princess Bride. Ha ha. Call me Inigo Montoya. Taxi. That voice that sounds like she was perpetually surprised by everything. I love that woman.
Have fun storming the castle. What else do we have today? We have Isabella Rossellini, also turning 73, daughter of Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini, which is basically Hollywood royalty meeting Italian cinema royalty. That's some serious genetic lottery winning right there.
Oh, yeah. Did you see her in that new Pope movie? What was it called? Conclave? Oh, she was great.
Yeah, she was.
Oh, you know who else was born today?
Who?
Blake Shelton from The Voice. He's 49.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, Blake Shelton and Paul McCartney share a birthday. I need a minute to process that. All right, that's enough. One revolutionized popular music forever, and the other, well, Blake seems nice.
Hey, don't sleep on Blake. I don't know what that means. The man's been on The Voice forever. He's got staying power.
Fair point. And rounding out our birthday crew is Antonio Gates, who's 45. NFL Hall of Famer, played for the Chargers his entire career, which honestly feels quaint in today's sports landscape where players change teams like they're changing socks.
And underwear. Yes. Gates was unstoppable. Yes. Basketball player turned tight end, which is such a weird career pivot when you think about it. Like, well, I'm good at catching balls while people try to murder me, so football?
That's right. All right, let's jump into our historical timeline, shall we? And we're starting with 1778, when British troops evacuated Philadelphia during the Revolutionary War.
Yes, let me get my fife out. Hold on. All right, now, this is an interesting thing because Philadelphia was supposed to be this strategic prize, right? The British occupied it for 9 months, and then they just left. All right.
Well, it wasn't quite that simple. The French had just entered the war, and they had entered on the American side. And suddenly, the British had to worry about their supply lines getting cut off. Plus, They were getting pressure to focus on the southern colonies.
Right. So they're like, oh, we thought it was a good idea, but that French people are coming, so let's go. Let's go
Let's
south.
move on, shall we?
But here's what I love about this. The British spent all this time and energy taking Philadelphia. I mean, they were there trudging through the streets and saying, we're staying put, which was the American capital at the time. And it basically did nothing for them. The Continental Congress just packed up and moved to York, Pennsylvania. It's like, we're out of here. We're farmers. We
It's
can do
like,
this anyway.
yeah, it's like conquering someone's house and then realizing they've just moved in with their parents. Well, this is
Very
awkward.
awkward, exactly. And you know what makes this even better? The British evacuation was such a mess that they had to march their troops across New Jersey in the middle of summer. Oh, and those hot wool. Oh,
Mm.
oh,
The hot wool red coats.
yes, being harassed by American forces the entire time. Ha ha! We're gonna get you.
That truly sounds miserable. Nothing says strategic withdrawal like trudging through New Jersey in July while people shoot at
Yeah,
you.
trudging through New Jersey any time of year. Ah, just kidding.
That's right. For New Jerseyans, it's
That's
Tuesday.
right.
You know, like,
What? What's the big deal?
what other war stuff we have? Anything in
Well,
1812,
yes,
Dave?
speaking of wars, Americans aren't entirely sure we won. June 18th, 1812 is when Congress declared the War of 1812.
Oh, the War of 1812, also known as that war we learned about for like 2 weeks in high school and mostly remember because of the Star Spangled
That's
Banner.
right, in the back of the class. Wasn't that when they burned where the president lives? And Dolly, the woman who has the taste.
Shut up, Albert!
Yeah,
Get back into the closet.
let me out. Yes, anyway. Right. But here's the thing that blows my mind about the War of 1812. It was declared on June 18th. Here we go again. But news traveled so slowly back then that if the British had known about American grievances just a few days earlier, the war might never have happened. Ew.
Wait, really?
I don't believe this. They've sent another letter by pony. It says they don't want to fight. Wait a minute, they're coming down the street with muskets. Run away!
So,
Yes.
so really, the war might not have
Yeah,
happened.
well, the British were actually in the process of repealing some of the trade restrictions that were pissing off the Americans, but the news hadn't reached America yet. How do you like that? So we declared
Oh,
war
wow.
over problems that were already solved. Ha!
That's the most 1812 thing I've ever heard. Sorry, we started a war, but we just got your text that you were going to fix the thing we were so
Yeah,
mad
and
about.
then the war lasted another 3 years.
Oh
Accomplished
man.
basically nothing except for giving us a few good songs and burning down each other's capital cities. And everyone just agreed to pretend it never happened. That's why we don't discuss it in high school.
Although we did get Andrew Jackson out of it, for better or worse. Mostly worse, but still.
Old Hickory!
Yes. And speaking of the 1800s,
Yes.
right at the end of the War of 1812, there was the Battle of Waterloo.
Ooh, Napoleon's final curtain
Um,
call.
That's
What
right.
a way to go out. Ouch.
You know what gets me about
No,
Waterloo?
Lane, what?
Napoleon had been exiled to Elba, escaped, retook France in what they call the 100 Days, and then immediately decided to pick a fight with literally everyone in Europe at once.
Yeah, well, that's Napoleon. It's like, I'm so bored, Josephine. What shall we do? Let's go invade someone again. Classic Napoleon. The man could not help himself. It's like he saw retirement and thought, no, thank you. I'd rather risk everything on one more military campaign. Now who's with me?
And the battle itself was just brutal. Something like
60.
65,000 casualties in a single
Ouch.
day. Wellington later called it the nearest run thing you ever saw in your life.
Well, what did he
The
mean by
nearest
that?
run thing.
Ugh.
I don't know. Who's
AI.
Wellington? Who's writing this script? This
Jeez,
drivel.
That's what
Oh,
That's
no.
what I love about
I guess-
Wellington's quote there, the understated Britishness of it. Like, this just nearly lost to the greatest military mind in European history. Bit close that,
Yeah, and poor Napoleon gets shipped off to St. Helena, which is basically the middle of nowhere in the South Atlantic. The man went from ruling most of Europe to being stuck on a tiny island with nothing to do but write his memoirs and complain about the weather.
And go to lunch. I heard he went to lunch a lot. You know what's wild? Waterloo is in Belgium, which means Napoleon's empire ended in a country that didn't even exist yet. Yeah, that's right. Belgium wouldn't
Hmm,
become independent until 1830.
that's such a good
I thought
point.
so.
He lost at a place that was technically still part of the Netherlands. Geography is
Yeah,
weird.
well, he had a thing for tulips, I think. Anyway, jumping ahead.
And chocolate.
Ah, chocolate. And canals.
Yes.
Oh, and windmills. And wooden clogs.
And very tall people that like to share
That's right,
bikes.
but there were no bicycles back then. Jumping ahead, 1940, we have Winston Churchill delivering one of the most famous speeches in history. Do you know which one it is, Lane?
Was it about a certain hour?
Yes, our finest hour on the beaches.
Yeah, this was just after the fall of France, right?
Yeah, the famous little boat rescue thing where they
Yeah, Britain is basically standing alone against Nazi Germany, and Churchill gets up in Parliament and delivers this masterpiece of wartime rhetoric.
right. Yeah, they're all waiting on the beach. Another run away moment for an army, and well, the thing is, timing is everything here. France had just surrendered. The British had barely evacuated from Dunkirk, and Hitler's looking across the channel, thinking, "This is going to be easy." Yeah. And Churchill gets up, and basically says, come on, us."
But here's what I love about that speech. It's not just bravado. Churchill acknowledges how dire the situation is. He talks about how the Battle of Britain is about to begin. And then he says that if they can stand up to Hitler, all Europe may be free and the life of the world may move forward into broad, sunlit
Yeah,
uplands.
I mean, that thing where he says this is our finest hour was a bit of a reach. But broad, sunlit uplands, who talks like that? It's so beautifully old fashioned and poetic, but it's also incredibly powerful.
And you know what? He was right. The speech was delivered exactly when Britain needed to hear it and basically set the tone for the entire war. No surrender, no compromise, just pure
Yeah.
defiance.
Come over here and let me see you try, okay? It's also worth noting that this wasn't just a radio speech. This was delivered to Parliament first and then re recorded for radio later. So all those famous recordings we hear aren't actually the live delivery where you'd hear them in the background going, I love
Really?
that when they do.
I, I had no
Oh, yeah,
idea.
Churchill would deliver the speech to Parliament and then go to the BBC studios later to record it for broadcast, which honestly makes sense. You don't want to risk technical difficulties when you're trying to rally a nation. You want it pure.
That's That's true. All right, shifting gears completely. June 18th, 1960, Arnold Palmer wins the US Open with a final round 65,
Wow.
which was a course
That's
record.
amazing. Geez, Arnie's army was in full effect. You know, I'm not much of a golf person, but Palmer was just one of those athletes who transcended the sport. I mean, amazing.
Yeah, that final round at Cherry Hills is the stuff of legend. Palmer started the day 7 shots behind and basically just decided to attack every single pin. It was completely insane and completely
Well,
brilliant.
what I love about Arnie is that he made golf fun. Before Palmer, golf was this very buttoned up, very country club sport, and he comes along with this aggressive style and this regular guy personality. Ohio.
Right, he's charging up fairways, going for impossible shots, and just making golf exciting to watch. Plus, the man had charisma for
Oh, and he
days.
was loving it. And that iced tea and lemonade drink? Go for it, Arnie. The Arnold Palmer. That might be his most lasting legacy, really.
You know what's funny? I drink Arnold Palmers all the time, and I honestly forgot they were named after a real person. That's how iconic he became. His name just became synonymous with the drink.
Well, the reason you probably forget it is that you've loaded it with vodka.
Oh, fair
Oh,
point. Fair point.
well, that's true immortality.
You know me too well, Dave. This is a family friendly show. Let's keep my vices out of
Give
it.
me another A and B, will ya? That's true. Immortality right there. Not just being remembered, but having people casually order your legacy at restaurants across America.
Yeah.
So what
Soon
happened?
they're gonna be ordering the Lane and Dave soon.
Excellent. Make it a double.
It's very it's very
That's
strong, but
right.
kind of scattered with ingredients you'd never think would come
Yeah,
together, but somehow they pull it
yes,
off.
but sweet
All
all
right.
the same.
Yeah, and salty.
Ah,
Perhaps
arr,
too
that's right.
salty?
I have a
'Cause
salty sweet
we're
Lane
gonna
and Dave, please.
that was my segue to talk about the SALT II
Ah,
treaty. It was,
1979.
1979 brings us to the signing of the SALT II treaty between Jimmy Carter and Leonid Brezhnev, which was this big nuclear arms limitation
That's
deal.
right, SALT 2, Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, round 2. And guess what? The Cold War produced some absolutely mind-bending acronyms.
That's true. The whole thing was this elaborate dance between superpowers trying to figure out how to not accidentally end the world while still maintaining the ability to end the world.
Right. So, shall we end the world or just sort of end the world, right? Let's agree only to have enough nuclear weapons to destroy civilization 10 times over instead of 50. Just for safety.
What's interesting is that SALT II was signed but never ratified by the US Senate because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan.
Mm.
Yes, they were there
Yeah.
first. So it was this huge diplomatic achievement that basically got shelved right away.
Yeah, that country should be just off limits for everyone. It's
Everyone, please stay out of
come on,
Afghanistan.
guys. What are you kidding me? Classic Cold War move. Spend years negotiating a treaty, sign it with great fanfare, and then
Yeah.
ignore it because something else happened. I mean, it's like internal relations run by people with severe ADHD.
I should
Yeah.
know. And that is exactly what it's like. But both sides kind of informally followed the treaty limits anyway, which is peak Cold War logic. We're not officially bound by this agreement, but we'll honor it anyway because mutual annihilation is bad for
That's right.
business.
Then we'll wait for salt 3 and then 4. We'll just keep adding more salt.
I want to see Salt against John Wick.
Yes.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing. 1983 gives us Sally Ride becoming the first American woman in space, which was huge.
Yeah, Sally Ride was a badass physicist, astronaut, and she had to put up with the most ridiculous questions from the media.
Oh, God, the questions were nuts. Will you cry if something goes wrong? Do you plan to have children in space? How do you manage your hair in zero gravity? The poor thing. Shoot.
I know. Meanwhile, she's got a PhD in physics from Stanford and she's flying on the Space Shuttle Challenger. Like, maybe ask her about the mission instead of her reproductive
That's right.
plans.
And my cake batter always comes out without lumps, especially in space. What I love.
They-
Huh?
I was gonna say, no one ever asks one of the male astronauts getting like, "Hey, you think you're gonna knock anybody up on this trip? When you're done with this mission, you gonna have a few kids? Nobody ever asks that question.
Right.
Why are they asking her? It's crazy.
So, Armstrong, tell us, when you're working on your car, do you put 10W in or 35W? I mean, come on. What I love is that NASA's PR machine went into overdrive for this mission. They knew it was historic, and they milked every second of media coverage, which was smart because space programs need public support, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah, and Sally Ride handled it all with such grace. She focused on the science and the mission and let her competence speak for
And you
itself.
know what's wild? It took until 1983 for America to send a woman to space. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union had already done it in 1963 with Valentina Tereshkova.
I think we told that story
Oh, yeah.
recently. Yes, yeah, it was 20 years, and it's embarrassing. Although to be fair, the Soviets sent Tereshkova up basically as a propaganda stunt, and then didn't send another woman to space for almost 20 years either.
And then there was the female chimp we sent up, Alberta. And
Alberta, get back in there, Alberta!
get in that capsule, Alberta, and put that dress back on. Fair point. At least when NASA finally did it, they integrated women into the astronaut corps properly. Better late than never, I guess.
All right, folks, we need to take a quick break here. And honestly, all this talk about historical achievements is making me
I know
hungry.
where you're leading, Lane. You know what goes great with pondering the sweep of human history? Take a guess.
Is it round with a hole?
Yeah, well, something like that. It's not a lifesaver. It's specifically
Oh,
Randy's Donuts.
yay! I was at Randy's last week, Dave, and I
Really?
got one of their. I was.
Oh,
I mean, I have one literally down the street from me
it's
now.
lovely.
And I went in and I got one of their apple fritters, which is
Oh,
basically the size of a
the
dinner
best.
plate. It's gloriously excessive.
Yes.
It's one of the best things that I can get, along with the cream-filled chocolate long john. Oh my god,
OMG. Well
that's
worth
right.
the hike down the street. That's what I'm
That's
talking about. Randy's doesn't mess around. They've been perfecting their craft since 1952. And it shows. Whether you want a classic glazed donut that'll make you question every other donut you've ever had, or you want to go wild with one of their specialty donuts, they've got you covered, my friend.
And can we talk about their location?
Yes,
That giant donut sign is basically a Los Angeles landmark at this point. It's been in movies, TV shows, music videos. It's
that's
iconic.
right, Lane. All roads lead to the donut. Plus, they're open 24 hours. Hello, which means you can
Woohoo!
satisfy your donut craving, whether you're getting up early, staying up late, or just lost. That's the kind of commitment to donuts that I respect.
So head over to randysdonuts.com and check out their full menu and locations. Trust us, your taste buds will thank you.
And now back to our regularly scheduled historical chaos.
Yes, regularly. All right, this next one is somber.
Oh.
June 18th, 1986 saw a tragic midair collision over the Grand Canyon that killed 25
Well,
people.
this was a collision between a small private plane and a sightseeing helicopter, and it led to major changes in aviation safety regulations. A previous mishap happened in the 50s, I think, between two TWA constellations known as Connies, whose
Hmm.
pilots decided to take a tour. They were going transcontinental and they decided to take a tour around the canyon to show the passengers, and they both went into each other. Boom.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. What made this particularly tragic was that it was completely avoidable. The Grand Canyon is this massive airspace, but there weren't adequate traffic control systems in place for the amount of tourist flights happening there.
And the aftermath led to a much stricter regulations about air tours over national parks. And, well, sometimes it takes a tragedy to force necessary changes, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even in places of incredible natural beauty, safety has to be the top priority. The Grand Canyon is magnificent, but it demands respect.
Well, moving to legal history, which I always get excited about, 1992
Yes.
brings us Georgia versus McCollum, where the Supreme Court ruled that defense attorneys can't exclude jurors based on race. Can you imagine that they didn't have that before then? Hard to believe.
I know. This was actually a really important civil rights decision that doesn't get talked about enough. So we're talking about it.
That's right, because everyone knows about Batson versus Kentucky from 1986, right? Right? Which said prosecutors can't exclude jurors based on race. But McCollum closed the loophole by saying defense attorneys can't do it either.
It's one of those cases where the principle is simple: discrimination in jury selection is wrong, period. But the legal reasoning gets complex because you're balancing different constitutional
Well,
rights.
what I find interesting is that this was a unanimous decision. In 1992, you could still get the Supreme Court to agree unanimously. Yeah, they all agreed that racial
Wow.
discrimination is bad. Simpler times, Lane, simpler times.
Yeah. The case itself involved a black defendant who was challenging the prosecution's decision to strike white jurors. But then the defense wanted to strike black jurors. It's a fascinating legal pretzel.
Ah, and ultimately, the court said that jury selection has to be fair to everyone. Isn't the statue outside holding the scale of justice got a blindfold on? Huh?
Oh, justice is
There you
blind?
go. Defendants, prosecutors, and the
Mm.
excluded jurors themselves have to be part of this. It's about the integrity of the entire system.
Yeah, and I hear they're upgrading or updating
Yeah.
the statue
Oh, really?
of justice. Yes, it has a red tie now.
Ah,
So moving on to 2018, it brings us to the red tie wearing President Trump directing the Pentagon to establish the Space Force, which honestly still sounds like something from a science fiction movie, but it's real.
it's real, but I haven't heard a damn thing about it since it was established. Where is it? Where's their concourse? Huh? I mean, the name sounds like it was a focus group by people who grew up watching Star Wars and Star Trek.
It does sound like that. But here's the thing, the concept isn't actually that crazy. Military operations in space are a real concern, and having a dedicated service branch to handle it makes some sense. In fact, it preceded NASA. We had operations in space. They decided, well, we should make this more of a public good effort. Let's call it NASA. And now we've decided maybe not all things need to be in NASA's hands. Let's give the Space Force another shot, but we'll give it a sexier name and not just part of the US Navy and part of the US Army.
Works
So it has its own branch now.
works for me. I gave
Yeah.
myself a sexier name and everything's changed. The real problem.
Okay, Bartholomew.
Oh, don't tell anybody. The real
I
problem
mean, Dave.
up there in the stratosphere isn't, what's being launched. It's what's up there now. There's so much space crap that they are
Yes.
bumping into each other. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
it's not like we're training stormtroopers to fight aliens. It's more about protecting satellites, monitoring space debris, and making sure other countries can't mess with our GPS systems. Ha ha.
Yeah. And the rollout was classic Trump. Lots of dramatic announcements and very little explanation of what the Space Force would actually do that the Air Force wasn't already doing.
Well, yeah, but, we're going to put it in Greenland, which we're going to take over in another month. And the branding was something. Remember the logo controversy? Everyone said it looked too much like the Star Trek Starfleet logo.
Well, to be fair, how many ways can you design a logo that says space without it looking like science fiction? It's a narrow design space. No pun intended. Ha
Oh,
ha ha.
space,
Oh, you
space,
missed that one, Dave.
space,
That one went
space, space,
that one went
space.
so far over your head it was in low Earth orbit.
Oh, but and now we have Space Force personnel called Guardians. Guardians of the Galaxy. Which honestly
Mm-hmm.
sounds cooler than Space Force officers or whatever the alternative would have been. Freeze!
That's
I'm a
true.
Space Force officer.
Jumping ahead to June 18th, 2020, the Supreme Court blocked the Trump administration's attempt to end DACA protections in a 5-4 decision. That's the Dreamers
That's
Act.
right. This was Chief Justice Roberts joining the liberal justices to basically say, you can't just end a program like this without proper procedure.
What's interesting is that the court didn't rule on whether DACA itself was legal or illegal. They ruled on the process of trying to end it.
Right. It was essentially a procedural decision. The court said, look, if you want to end this program, you need to follow the proper administrative procedures and consider all the consequences, not just say, okay, we're done.
Yep. DACA affects hundreds of thousands of people who were brought to the US as children and have built their entire lives here. The human stakes really couldn't be any higher.
Well, and the legal complexity is mind-bending. You've got constitutional law, immigration law, administrative law, every other kind of law, and just basic human compassion all tangled up all together.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where the law meets real people's lives, and the consequences of legal technicalities can be devastating for actual families.
Well, the whole thing highlights how broken our immigration system is. And why isn't there a Ellis Island somewhere? Huh? Why are these people just running through a fence? It's when we're arguing.
I don't know, Dave.
Why?
But you're right. It's broken.
Why can't people fix this thing? It's so simple. Build another island. And the legal status of people who've been here since they were kids and know no other country is unfathomable.
I know an island we could use.
Gilligan's Island.
I think we've been there. When we covered this, I think we've been there since 1903. Somebody fact checked me, but I think there's a bay called
Oh,
Guantanamo
right.
that we've been on for a long time. We just move Ellis Island a little further off and we can check people in there and then get them in that
That's
way. What do you think?
capital idea, Lane. Capital idea.
Somebody should use it for something.
Yes.
Most of those prisoners that were there are dead now or
Well,
gone.
they've been
So,
there for 30 years, so come on.
we've got space. So, moving to a kind of inner space and also somber. Finally, we have to address June 18th, 2023, when the Titan submersible imploded during a dive to the Titanic wreck, killing all 5 people aboard.
This is such a tragic and preventable disaster. The whole story just gets worse the more you learn about it.
Yeah, what made it so heartbreaking was the international rescue effort. Coast Guard ships, research vessels, and aircraft from multiple countries searching desperately, not knowing that the submersible had already been
Yeah,
destroyed.
into smithereens. I don't think there was much left. The implosion happened so quickly that the passengers, they say, wouldn't have suffered, which is some small comfort, but the whole operation was plagued with safety concerns from the very beginning, from the get-go, that experts had been raising for years.
Yeah, it's a reminder that the deep ocean is one of the most hostile environments on Earth. The pressure at Titanic's depth is crushing, literally. There is no room for error.
Yeah. In other words, don't get in a submersible that's controlled by an Xbox controller. Okay?
That's probably a good litmus test.
It highlighted the dangers.
How do you drive this
Well,
thing? Mario Kart driving? No, a steering wheel? I don't think so.
are
No.
we going to go down yet? Hold on, I have to finish my video game. One more level. And it highlighted the
See, I
danger.
get on this stationary bike and I pedal really fast.
And I make electricity like Marianne.
We'll be fine.
When you're charging people hundreds of thousands of dollars to visit Titanic, the safety standards should have been absolutely bulletproof, or at least
I
submarine.
think that's what they were paying for.
Yeah.
And the irony of people dying while visiting the site of another maritime disaster wasn't lost on anyone.
No.
It was tragic on multiple levels.
Oh, yes.
Or depths.
Oh, so there you have it. June 18th, throughout history. From Napoleon's downfall to Sally Ride's triumph, from Churchill's defiance to a modern tragedy in the deep blue ocean.
To some, it might seem amazing how one date can contain so much human experience, victories, defeats, progress, setbacks, and everything else in between. But we're learning on this podcast that pretty much every day has a lot of stuff packed into it.
It's true. And somehow Paul McCartney's birthday fits right in there with all of it. The man's been making music longer than some countries have existed.
Speaking of existing, we exist because of listeners like you. If you enjoyed today's journey through June 18th, please subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you want to support us in a more delicious way, check out Randy's Donuts at randysdonuts.com, because history is better with donuts.
It is. We'll be back next time with another date, another collection of stories, and probably another tangent about food.
Oh, I hope so. Until then, I'm Dave.
And I'm Lane, reminding you that history is happening right now, and someday someone's going to do a podcast about today.
Wait a minute. Isn't that us? That's either inspiring or terrifying.
Why not both?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
See ya.
yeah. See, go make some history, everybody.
That's right. Buy a donut.
Albert, get back in the closet.
Get your butt back in there.